because he actually reached out to me. So I love when that happens, and I look forward to bringing him out. So before we do that, I always like to hear what is going on with you. You've got such an exciting life, and so much is going on in your business world. So I'm going to spotlight you and your banners, Ronnie. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing, Al.
Well, thank you for asking. I don't know if my life is as exciting as all that, but I'd like to entertain that thought for a minute. I do know that professionally, what we do with Brand and Culture Alignment Toolkit is create a series of experiences for employees, members of a team. We actually prefer to call them citizens now, because citizenship is really what we try to build in people. That feeling that you're part of something and that what you do as part of something makes a difference. And we call that connecting people with purpose. That alignment process is what we do with the Brand and Culture Alignment Toolkit. And we've been doing a fair amount of it lately with some pretty exciting results for a lot of companies. So thanks for the chance to talk a little bit about that.
It's my pleasure. Mr. Cini, how has your business been impacted, if at all, by the pandemic?
Well, not at all. It's a great question. And I'm sure every company would answer it differently. A lot of the companies that we're working with are companies who've been severely impacted by the whole work from home movement, which is now more than just the pandemic. I mean, the pandemic actually triggered a shift in what the workforce claims it needs. And employees are expecting more autonomy now in their work, and they're expecting to be able to work remotely. And meeting those expectations in order to keep your best people has been part of what companies have had to adapt to. So aligning people with purpose is actually a solution for companies that are struggling with COVID and figuring out how to work remotely. And it's a very effective solution. In fact, so in that respect, it's helped us. It's also been helpful in the sense that we can deliver the whole program virtually. So everything that we do can be done via Zoom. That's
fantastic. Al, I was just reading today about the fact that people are leaving their corporate jobs. I think it was 2.9% of the workforce. I don't know if it was July or August, and 2.7%. But people are basically realizing that they have options now. They can go and work somewhere else that actually is a culture that is more receptive to whatever it is that they need. And I think a big part of this is that people now realize they can do their work from home. So what are your thoughts about the fact that people are leaving corporate jobs? Maybe they're going out on their own, or maybe they're just getting another job. Well, they're not telling anybody, are they? Which is really kind of funny. I mean, I don't think they feel like they have to do anything anymore. And that whole idea that the workforce is focused on its freedom, the ability to express, and what employees really want really is a life and a working life that are together, that are one experience, not two different experiences. So companies with strong employer brands are doing a great job hiring the people that are leaving companies that have weak employer brands. People want to go to work for companies that they believe will help them become the best versions of themselves that they can possibly be. And that's a great segue into Steve, because a lot of what Steve does is help companies brandish their employer brand by creating speaker opportunities for their top executives, so that the word can get out there that they're great companies to work for. Absolutely. I totally agree with that. So let's bring our guest out. His name is Steve Markman, and he is the founder and president of Markman Speaker Management, LLC. Welcome to the program, Steve. Steve. Now, I don't know if you slept through all that, Steve.
Thank you, Jacalyn.
Did you sleep through what I just said, or were you awake? I mean, you heard what I said, right? Am I right?
Yes, it froze for about 10 seconds, and my not what it used to be. So hopefully we'll be able to keep
the point we're bringing you in on is that employees need now more than ever to have compelling, powerful employer brands to attract the best talent. And a big part of that is the PR boost they get when their top executives get speaking opportunities in front of large groups of prospective employees. And when they do a great job speaking in those venues, they attract people to their purpose. Do I have that right?
I couldn't have said it any better myself.
Well, thank you. But go ahead and keep talking. How do you do that?
So I get hired by businesses of all sizes. They don't have to be companies. They can be a solo practitioner. They can be a consultant or a lawyer or any professional service type of person, or they could be running their own company all the way up through and including Fortune 500 companies. I've worked for IBM Consulting and Global Services, PayPal, Bank of America, Subaru, and large companies like that. And they all have one thing in common when they want my services, which is to find speaking engagements for their executives. It could be the CEO, it could be one level below that, the vice presidents or senior vice presidents, executive VPs. But the common denominator is there are several reasons for speaking and why they want the exposure. It's marketing and PR, right? So it's building visibility. It's building and attaining, and in some cases, creating mind share. Mind share is very important, whether you're going out to buy a product or you're going to be an employee. Mostly they're speaking for the marketing and PR. It's sort of an extra benefit if they can make a good impression on someone in the audience and somebody says, hey, I want to work for that company. But mostly it's to maintain and improve visibility. There's a development aspect. If you're a professional service firm, like a consulting firm or a law firm, you want to be able to have the ability to be in front of prospective clients. So at the end of the day, when someone comes up to a partner of a law firm who just gave a presentation and says, Al, can I have your card? In the old days when there were cards, and even now when we go back to in person again, or they contact them if they see them on a Zoom and they're a prospect potentially, or they're a long-term prospect for the services that speaker just demonstrated expertise in. And then it's just the whole general idea of thought leadership, right? So thought leadership can take many forms. It could be from writing. It can be from speaking. It could be from a podcast. But you are demonstrating expertise as a subject matter leader and subject matter expert, what's known in the industry as an SME. And that's why all of these engagements, which are for the most part unpaid engagements, have a payment later. It is that if somebody gets a client out of it or a customer out of speaking, it could be 5 years from now, it could be 10 years from now, it could be tomorrow, but it's future income. So it's not getting paid to speak, which is also something that I do for companies that want to bring in a speaker to have for their motivational purposes and that sort of thing. But in most of what I do, it's to be able to put executives in front of the right audience to demonstrate that this company or this person has something interesting to say. And it's never a sales pitch, right? It's always an opportunity to talk about trends, to talk about what you know of in the knowledge base of that particular subject. And it's giving people information that they could use to take back to their own offices, their own companies, their own businesses, their own lives to use.
So, I just want to get a sense of your business model. I know it's markmanspeaker.com, and that's where people can go to learn more about you. But the Markman Speaker company, your company, helps it could be solopreneurs, but it could be companies. They want to make a point in the marketplace. They want to do it by establishing themselves as thought leaders, and they want to use their own people as representatives of the company in public venues, and it could be via Zoom, most likely will be these days, speaking on subjects not about the company.
That's right.
It's not about selling a company. It's about something that nobody else does. These days, for example, supply chain would be a big topic that people would be interested in.
Very much so. And there are conferences specifically for the supply chain industry. There are a half a dozen associations that members the of a company. They with all of these bottlenecks in the supply chain as a result of COVID. And so if a company came to me and said that they want their supply chain executive to go out and speak, there's many venues. There is a conference, Al, for every single subject ever known to mankind. I mean, in any subject, you can have a conference on thin pens. And then next week it'll be ones on thick pens. I mean, it's seriously, there's a topic on everything. There are 37,000 associations in the United States alone.
Wow.
There's
that's quite a lot.
World.
So whether
Steve,
you're a manufacturing company or a retail company, that's terrific. That's great opportunity.
Sorry, there seems to be a 10-second delay or so. Steve, I wanted to ask you, you've been doing this for a very long time. What is it that got you interested in this business?
Well, I've been doing it for 45 years, which means I started when I was 5. We have a great story that I can tell, which is how did I get into this business? And 2 words: by accident. I really didn't decide when I was 5 to do this, but I was working for the Conference Board, which is a very large research, publishing, and conference organization in New York City. I had been doing a lot of writing and research for the first 6 or 7 years out of college, and for a couple of different organizations. And a colleague of mine unfortunately took ill, and my boss came into my office and said, Mitch was doing the conferences, so now you're doing the conferences because he's going to be out for a bit. So spin up 35 years, and I'm still doing it. Mitch never got back to doing the conferences because I kind of took his job. I found that I took a liking to it, that I was able to develop certain techniques of creating conferences. And at that time, what I was doing was the content. So I would develop the agenda, and I would decide on topics and recruit the speakers. Years later, I got into the speaker side, which I've been doing since 1994 when I started my business, where I am almost like an agent, right? So I represent the speakers, and I have a bit of a niche business in that I am mostly finding the unpaid speaking engagements for executives, whereas the Speakers Bureau division that I have is where I send companies to look for speakers who get paid to speak, and they get paid to speak because they've written multiple books, or they're former cabinet members, government officials, professional athletes, and the like. So it's a different business, and I also train people, both individuals and corporate executives, on not how to speak, but how to get the speaking engagements, because it's very competitive. You know the adage that speaking is one of the most feared things a person can possibly face. Well, that may be true, but there's an awful lot of people that want to speak at conferences and forums and webinars. And so there's a lot of competition. And so you have to understand what it takes to be successful at it, which is being able to have the right topic, talking to the right audience, and being able to know how to get that speaking gig is having the right materials that you can state as a proposal to the conference organizer. Most people can't call up the organizer and say, I'm here, I'd like to speak. They really have to sell themselves on what they can do until they get in front of the camera, and then the selling has to stop, and it has to be a substantive talk.
Thank you.
It's an interesting subject, and I'm sure there are an awful lot of people who are watching and listening that want to know more about it. But my question for you is, can anybody be a speaker? I mean, is this, you say there's some barriers. It sounds like you help coach people on speaking too. Is that right, Steve?
So the one thing that I don't do is the actual coaching of presentation skills. So to teach people, and I have a 2-hour version. There's so much material about how to get the speaking engagement that I don't even have time to teach them how to speak or how to deliver an effective presentation. And so for that, I refer them to some colleagues that do that I work with. But I will tell you that since the start of the pandemic and the shift to, as you mentioned earlier, predominantly having or what commonly called virtual patients, has come a whole dynamic of what is needed and what makes a speaker successful. Because before, and I've given a lot of presentations myself, I'm sitting down right now. I never used to do that. We never used to do that. You'd stand in front of an audience and you'd have a whiteboard or a blackboard or whatever, and you'd give your presentation, you'd give your PowerPoint, and show a slideshow, and now you're sitting, right? And you're looking at a small black box, and you're not even seeing the people in the audience, because if you're speaking to people, they take off the video completely. So you're basically looking at yourself like you're talking into a mirror. It's a dynamics, because you have to be used to that, and you have to keep the audience engaged, which is more difficult than when you have a live audience. So there's a lot of things going on now in this pandemic that people have to learn all over again. But to answer your original question, yes, I think that most people, not a person, can be a speaker, because you still have to have some ability to speak clearly. You have to have that lack of fear, which is what stops most people. So if you took that fear away, most people absolutely could be a public speaker, or even an executive that wants to get out and speak. A lot of executives, they've reached a certain point in their career where they're hugely successful. They still are afraid to speak in front of a live audience. It's not the same as speaking for a staff meeting, right? And so that is another dynamic that I don't teach people how to speak, but I review with them what they do need to know in order to be successful, and convince somebody that they should be a speaker for their conference or their dinner meeting, or whatever the case may be.
Great.
Thank you, Steve. I would just want to mention that I am standing. Yes, see me. I am not sitting in a chair. I am standing.
Excellent.
On that note, we're going to go to a commercial break, and then we will be back on the Business Talk Show. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with Mr. Cini and Mr. Markman. We'll see you shortly.
Hey everybody, my name is Ralph Graves Jr. I'm the host of the Ralph Graves Jr. Show, and I want to invite you to pick up my book, Unstoppable. I wrote a book called Unstoppable. It's 7 universal laws that will transform how you pursue and achieve success. The one thing that my 20 years of law enforcement has taught me is that no matter who you are, we are all governed by universal laws, like gravity. But in this book, we're going to talk about laws like the law of forgiveness, laws like the law of control, the law of intelligent practice, the law of expectancy. I was able to see how those, no matter what their background was, those who identified and treated these laws with respect, they were able to go on and lead successful lives. So pick up this book, and you can go ahead and pick it up at Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, RalphGravesJr.com, where anywhere where fine books are sold. Thank you.
There are 7.7 billion people on Earth today. 40% of these people are under the age of 25. Young adults are the most fertile mission field in the world today. In Scripture, we see Jesus pouring his life into 12 young adults who he equipped to change the world and all of history. Like Jesus, we believe that the best approach to reach the world with the gospel is to invest in young, emerging leaders and equip them to build disciple-making movements. Concentric is the notion of surrounding and sharing a common center. Our center is the model and strategy of Jesus for both leadership development and ministry formation. As a global alliance, we provide equipping in biblical leadership based on Jesus' example in the New Testament. Jesus modeled for us how to make disciples that reproduce. Focusing on leadership development is key to creating movements that spread the gospel and Jesus' disciple-making strategy to young leaders around the globe. Our Ministry Alliance partners are actively equipping leaders and building movements of multiplication that reproduce the life of Christ. Join us today to equip young leaders with Jesus' strategy that will change cities and nations.
The session that we had with BCAT was really entertaining and enlightening. We were able to put together some very specific steps that we as individuals can take, and it was really fun to all come together and see sort of where we're going as a team and how we can all get there together.
We had a tremendous experience with the BCAP partners. One of the challenges that we have as an organization is to make sure that we have the right people in the right chairs doing the right thing. To do that well, you have to have synergy. You can try to dream up ways to make sure that your group does that, or you can rely on experts. We would recommend BCAP partners to anybody who's looking to take their organization to the next level.
Academy Sedan and Limo is a full-service transportation company serving the Philadelphia metropolitan area with full knowledge of the New York City, Baltimore, and Washington, D.C. areas. We pride ourselves on being the most dependable, conscientious company in the industry. Our always on-time service and dependable pricing make us the company to call for any event or occasion. Our vehicles can accommodate any size party for any occasion. Our vehicles range from four-door sedans to SUVs to minivans to limo buses to full-size tour buses and can accommodate groups of 2 to 100. We offer airport shuttle service or over-the-road service without limitation regarding mileage or time, and no drive is too long or too far. So if you find yourself in need of transportation of any type with any vehicle, give us a call at 610-842-4564 and let us show you what a real transportation company can do for you.
Use code ACADEMY2020 to receive 20% off your first 3 rides, including parking and tolls.
Welcome back to Wrapping the Dr. Jacalyn, the Business Talk Show. My name is Cini, and I'm working with Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck today. And we're talking with Steve Markman, who is here to talk about MarkmanSpeaker.com, his company. And Steve, before the program, we talked a little bit. You said you're partly a speakers bureau, partly you kind of. I want to explore your speakers. I want to explore the business model with you. So sell me. I have this thing called the Brand and Culture Alignment Toolkit. I would love to get in front of groups of people to talk about it. If I were your client, where would we start?
Right. So I would ask you for your target audiences. So who brings you in for this toolkit? I'm assuming it's the HR folks. It could be someone with a title of HR director, or if it's a big company, chief human resource officer, as they're known, or chief human capital officer, as they're also called in some really big companies. And make sure that it's an audience that I've been able to worked with before and handle, and I know that there are opportunities out there. And then I would say that I can tell you about my two businesses that you could take advantage. Is one is called the Executive Visibility Speaker Program Service, where I do all what I call heavy lifting. Basically,
Okay.
turn it over to me and I do all the work. I identify through a search and prepare databases and public databases. I research all the possible events that you could potentially speak. So I know where to submit proposals on your behalf, and those would be in whatever geography you desire. You may say, we only operate on the West Coast, or we only operate in the United States, or we operate in. So whatever the geographies are that you want, that's what I target, and it could be worldwide. I've placed speakers in conferences in probably 40 or 50 countries, and I think 2 planets at one point. So there's no limit to where opportunities are, and I'm able to reach out to those folks. So that's the speaking program. Then I do for companies, and by the way, you asked me about business model. So that business model is a fee-based model in that I get paid a fee based on the scope for a year, and we make an amount for each month. I don't watch the clock once the price has been determined. And then I also, for those who are solo practitioners or very small companies, let's say 2 or 3 people, and they can't have a budget, or they don't have a budget that can pay for me to do all the work, then I have a DIY program, a do-it-yourself program, where I teach and coach in a 2-hour version or a 4-hour version all the tactics, strategies, and tricks of the trade of how to get speaking engagements, all the elements, and we go over what the topics are. I spend a lot of time making sure it's the right topic and that it's written correctly in terms of what's called the abstract, the description, and that's part of what I do also. And by the end of the 2 or 4 hours, especially the 4-hour one, which is a deep dive into what their needs are, and it's all customized. I don't do any public workshops per se. It's pretty much all customized at the time and convenience of the person that I'm teaching. And then by the end of the 4 hours, they can know how to basically get speaking engagements for themselves, or if they took the class on behalf of one of their colleagues or one of the employees of the company, for them. So it's a solo practitioner consultant. Usually I coach the person who's actually going to be the speaker, right? The consultant, him or herself. If it's a company, like I went into a law firm last year, and I taught the individual who's responsible for getting speaking engagements for the partners. So that would typically be someone with the title of director of PR or manager of PR or chief marketing officer, whatever the case may be, whoever's in charge of that particular aspect of marketing, which is what I call speaker placement.
Great.
Thank you, Steve. I was wondering, what do you do to hone your skills? You've been doing this for so long. You work with so many people. How do you keep yourself relevant? What are your tips for that?
Well, I always believe that reading is a great thing. So I think that when people hate on a lot of things, I've always knowing a little bit about a lot. I don't necessarily know a lot about one thing, but because I cover such a broad array of subjects and industry, then I try to keep up to date on those things. When a client comes to me and they want me to have speaking, it's typically based on function. So they might be, they want to speak to HR people, or they want to speak to IT people, or they want to speak to cybersecurity people, whatever their specialty is. At the same time, they also should want to speak to different industries that may have a greater need for what they are specializing in than, let's say, other industries. So I'll look at, for one particular client, retail, for example, or banking and finance, financial services, law. So whatever industry they are either in or that they want to reach as a target to get this exposure in front of those folks, that's what I'll do. And so I try to read personally. I try to read a little of everything, right? So I read Wall Street Journal, New York Times, New Yorker. Try to be a well-rounded person, and I think that's something that will hold people in good stead. And you may find it something so much that they'll decide, hey, well, I can be an expert in something, and the next thing you know, even though that may not be their profession, they know where they could go out and speak on something.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate that. Mr. Cini, are you a big reader? Do you spend a lot of time reading?
I'm sorry.
Reader?
Actually, no, not really. But thank you for asking. but I do have a question, though. I mean, I guess my next question is: I make this investment in markmanspeaker.com, and we work together. And then I get out there on the speaker circuit, and I start making presentations. How? In what ways does that pay off for me, Steve, practically?
Good question, Al. So because whether I taught somebody how to do it or whether I'm doing it myself, there's something that's in common, and that is speak to the right audience. And if you're speaking to, then those people will become prospects, prospective customers, prospective employees, prospective partners, or there'll be media in the audience, and they'll write. So there's some that you will gain from that audience. It's usually a long-term effort. It's not a short-term. It doesn't happen immediately. A year from now, somebody might, if you were speaking out, somebody might pull your handout off their shelf and say, gee, I need somebody with that has that knowledge. I need somebody that can put a workshop together for us, like Al was talking about, and in using those sort of elements and teachings. And they'll call you, and they'll say, yeah, I heard you speak at the so-and-so conference, and would love to have you come and talk to us about maybe doing something like that for us. So it does have a short and long-term benefit.
It's good to know.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. Steve, we are streaming your banner across the bottom of the screen, but what is the best way for people to reach you, especially people listening on the radio, and who would you like to reach out to?
Sure. So the people that I would benefit from my training or having me do the work are twofold. They're either individual solo practitioners who I think would benefit from learning how to get engagements that they can use as a business development, growing your business type of tool, as well as corporate PR and marketing folks who are looking to have for their companies and for the executives who work for them. Those are my two ideal overall type of clients that I think would benefit from my services. And the best way to reach is either through my website. So my company, again, is Markman Speaker Management. My website is markmanspeaker.com. And on that website, you can find my phone number, my work number, my cell number, and how to reach me also by email, which I also say now for the listening audience, as they say, which is my email is S as like Steve Markman, Markman at Markman Speaker SPEAKER.com. And for no additional charge, if you want to know how far apart these speakers, I will be happy to tell you. Twice a year I get a call from people who think the speaker in Markman Speaker is our audio speakers, as opposed to people whose audio comes out of their mouth.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Steve. It's been a pleasure having you here, and we wish you all the success in the world.
Great program. Thank you, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, and thank you so much for having me, Jacalyn and Al. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Bye-bye. And for people who are just joining, if you missed anything, of course, you can always go over to our YouTube channel, which is USA Global TV, and you can watch this episode and all of our shows at your convenience. Mr. Cini, what are you up to for the rest of the week? Anything exciting coming up for you?
Well, yeah, I'm going to call Steve and ask about becoming a speaker. I think that, and by the way, you want to make a connection with Steve on the subject of talking heads. Maybe you can spend a couple of minutes talking about talking heads.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So Talking Heads is our platform that we are rolling out in conjunction with the official launch of USA Global TV, which is January the 10th. And Talking Heads is a platform for elite experts in their field, people who have at least 5 years experience doing what it is they're doing. They are recognized in their industry as being the best. And these people will have an opportunity to purchase a license so that they can actually have an opportunity to broadcast themselves. So instead of what we saw before with Talking Heads, where I'm engaging and we're having a second person, we're going back and forth, this show will be all about the talking head. And the talking head will have the opportunity to be on other platforms as well as we continue to grow together. And so when people come into the platform, they might be at one level and they want to have the opportunity to broadcast on other platforms. And we watch their progression and then help them spread the word about what it is that they're doing. And then they are officially a talking head, bringing value across the world.
It's exciting. I'm looking forward to participating. I know we talked about
yes,
that.
I am too.
That'll be a lot of fun. And Steve Markman might in fact have some clients who would be interested in becoming talking heads as well. So it was great talking with him today. I think it's a good opportunity all around. Thank
you so much for bringing that up. And essentially, we have a brochure that explains everything. And we have 3 options for people. They can decide on one of the 3 licenses, then we hold an onboarding meeting, and the talking head has work that they have to do in addition to the work that we have to do. So we will be launching all new websites going forward, and we've got a lot of things going on behind the scenes to help everybody be the best that they can possibly be. So thank you again, Al, for bringing that up. I will reach out to Steve. And now over to you again, just to share what it is you're doing at BCAT and where people can. So in other words, they want to connect with you. You're legendary, as I mentioned. Everybody loves Al Cini. You have a great voice. And people might be intimidated to reach out. So that's why I'm saying that. People might be intimidated and they might think, I don't know if he'd want to work with me. So can you kind of just dispel any thoughts or fears that people might have of reaching out?
Well, first of all, I really don't bite. No, for sure. I love talking with people. Anybody who really knows me knows that I like making new friends around the subject of brand and cultural alignment, around aligning people with your purpose. That's just a fun experience for me. So I'm easily reached via email at al.cini@getbcat.com. We also have a monthly webinar that we're running where we explain what we do, and we don't do it as a webinar. We do it as a Zoom meeting. So everybody on the meeting gets to see everybody else, get to meet everybody else, gets to make connections. It's a connecting kind of a networking opportunity. And it's also a chance to learn about what aligning people with purpose actually means and how we do it. And in fact, how you can do it yourself. And that is at getbcat.com/webinar. So it's very easy to sign up for that. We're having another one in November. We just did one yesterday. It was great, a lot of fun. and a lot of energy and very interactive. And I hope we'll see some of our guests there.
Thank you, Al. And as you know, social media is really important. It's sort of repeat, repeat, repeat. I think people forget that you're really good at social media. And I think you also could give people some tips on that. But the reason I'm bringing that up is that as a guest on this show, it's really would behoove a person like Steve to go over to the social media platforms and share this broadcast. Share it 3 times a day, actually, if you really want to get people to be watching, because it's hard to get people's attention while you're live streaming because everybody's doing something on their own. But because of social media, we have the ability to bring things to the forefront for people.
Well, listen, instead of tuning into an old Oprah broadcast and learning about Harry and Meghan, which is nothing to learn at all, except that there's another dysfunctional family out there whose last name is Windsor. You could actually be learning by tuning into some of the guests that you have on your programs, Dr. Jacalyn, where you can actually learn tips on how to, people who watched and listened to our program today met a guy who can help them become a speaker that they could use as a PR opportunity to get out there in front of an audience to help them grow their business. That is solid knowledge that you could use tomorrow, not gossip about somebody you've never met and are never going to meet. So
very
true.
Really
have to make a shift in our brains between wanting to be entertained and actually wanting to be informed and engaged in what we're doing. When we make that shift, we'll all become more productive.
Thank you so much, Al. You always know how to sum things up so nicely. As we close out our show, we have a brand new show coming up right after this. It's called Happy Seniors on the Go. So I hope that people will join us. This is a show really dedicated for senior citizens and sharing all the wonderful things that we're doing. I was thinking myself that being on this platform, many people I work with are in their late 60s all the way up to their early 80s. And I think that is just fantastic.
It's exciting and it sounds like fun. It sounds like my kind of program. And now if I'm going to sit for another hour, I'm going to have to get some more preparation.
Yes. Well, that being said, we're going to close out this show right now. Al, it was great seeing you, everybody. Thanks for being here. We look forward to seeing you again, hopefully right around the corner in 15 minutes. All right, take care. Bye, everyone.
Bye now.